Let me ask you this then, as we pivot to 33, because it's such an interesting pick. It's it's the pick that goes overnight, right? You're on clock overnight,
Mhm.
which usually brings up a number of trade potential possibilities to trade back. You could also trade up, like I did in my mock this week, where I traded up to take Emeka Ibuka at 28.
Mm.
And so you have options at 33. But before we get into those options, let me ask you this in regards to now that we're back at talking about the Browns' perspective at 33. Where would you feel comfortable taking Shedeur Sanders?
This is a interesting question because I don't think
Right.
anything I say can be considered right from anybody who wants to take him at 2, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to take him at 2 and I say feels like 25, like
Yeah.
25 trading back in for extra fourth, giving up a fourth to get back into the first round. I think that's usually the price of fourth or a fifth.
Yeah.
That would feel right for me for Shedeur, right? Like my whole thing with not taking Shedeur at 2 is I just don't think it's worth missing out on getting one of these guys at the top end of the draft who could become one of the best players
A
um,
staple. Yeah.
at their position group for a while, right?
Yeah.
So if you can get that guy and then you get Shedeur and then it's a much less buy-in, so you can have some flexibility to say, hey, if we get a chance at Arch or Lenoris or maybe Cade Klubnik has the magical year times 2 that he had last year, but like even better, and then all of a sudden he's considered a top 3 pick, and you have the chance to select him. Cool,
Yeah.
you
You
can
can
make that
move.
move.
Yeah.
If Shedeur hasn't bared fruit, or you can trade Shedeur high or whatever it is to move on from it. It's not the same as investing that second overall pick, which is like, hey, like guys you draft in the top 5, I mean, they got to be franchise cornerstones, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Gotta
and you
be.
can't just give up on a franchise cornerstone because they had a bad year. So
Right.
this is, I think, a much more fine place to take a quarterback. If it doesn't work out, the collateral damage isn't as big because you're not worried about it taking you out of a couple of draft classes. Like if it's an immediate failure, if it's a delayed failure, like Kenny Pickett, 2 years, they couldn't draft the quarterback. Like that still could happen, right? But I think at
Yeah.
least by 2027, you'd be in a situation to make the determination whether this guy could be your guy or not. And then you could
Yeah.
still draft somebody in 2027, where if you take him at 2, you're probably riding out that rookie contract like the Giants did with Daniel Jones, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you get
Yeah.
any sniff, you're going to spend $45 million, or well, by then it's going to be what, 58, $60 million for that guy.
Yes.
The way that the salary cap's rising, so
Yeah.
that to me is a lot more of a fine place to get a Shedeur
I
or
think
a
that's a
Cam
good answer.
Ward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think 25. If you have to trade back into the first round, it's worth the extra 4. I don't think anybody's going to complain about that.
No.
Would I say that it's like a sure bet to work out? No, I still have my concerns about these prospects, but I compared Shedeur to Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy
Yeah.
Bridgewater was that level of pick, and I think if he would have stayed healthy, there was a good chance of him living up to that pick in Minnesota. They're in that Derek Carr range of prospect
Hmm.
where it could work out that way or something like that, but the spend
Yeah.
is just much less there.
Yeah, but that's very fair, I think. Um, Now, are there any other guys? You're at 33. Are there any other guys that are fringe first round picks that you worry about getting to 33 that are worth for you jumping up to get? Is there like a player in the first round? Like for me, it is Abuka. Like if he fell to 28, I think in this class. I think he's like a perfect fit for the Browns offense. I would go get him if I could.
It depends on how the wide receiver board fell for me,
Yeah.
because I think Abuka and Aoman are very different wide receivers, but I think gonna be the same quality of player if they pan out.
Yeah.
Ibuka has that just incredible athletic ability, but like A.M. Manor, he kind of reminds me a lot of Amari Cooper, right? Chris route
Right.
runner, strong hands, just a guy who could be that low tier fringe number one receiver for you. So like if Ibuka's gone at 20, well, on the board at what, 28, you said, right?
Yeah.
But A.O. Manor's still there, and I call around, and I don't think anybody's going to take a wide receiver, I'm fine sitting at 33 and getting whichever one falls to me. I think if you're the Browns, maybe tackle is where
Yeah.
you get that urge from, right? So for me, Josh Connerly is a guy I have ranked in that same space. If Josh Simmons falls to late first round, I think you got to get the green light to move back up in there and go grab
What
him.
about Membu? Are you moving
And about
up
from
for
Purdue,
him? Yeah.
I think he's a guard. Um, instead of a tackle. So that changes
Same
things.
same with
So
Zabel.
yeah, was that the guy? Yeah, Gray Zabel from North Dakota
Yep.
State. Definitely an interior guy. I think he would be a center for the Cleveland Browns, to be honest with you. Really good player. Could play guard, could play both positions. I think if the Browns draft him, he'd be a center. I don't think they trade back in for that. And they might handle center in free agency too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think tackles the one position outside of quarterback where if I'm like, hey, this guy's there. It's only going to cost us a fourth to move up. It might end up being worth it. There is going to be a little bit of a cost there because like you do want to bring in as many players as possible in this year's draft. But yeah, I think tackle. If Simmons is there, if you're really concerned about Connerly making it to 33, that is where it justifies it because the scarcity at the position. Like there are players like Caleb Johnson who I think is really good, but
Yeah.
ultimately I think the class is so good at running back that I'm like, hey, you
You
don't
gotta
gotta
wait.
jump up for a running back here, right? Like the price is not going to be right for that, but you be fine waiting, and I think you can get maybe somebody who's not as good as Caleb Johnson, but still can fill that hole for you. So yeah, that's tight end. I mean not tight end, tackle, quarterback.
Tackle.
Yeah, those are the two spots where I'm like, hey, it's scarce enough to where I would be willing to slightly reach and
Yeah.
jump in and trade up for a guy here or there to take him at an earlier position just to secure that I get it because I don't feel good about the rest of the board.
Yeah. Because there is kind of a drop off after the Simmons Connerly pick, and often you see Connerly mocked at 33. I've seen him mocked there a few times. So
And teams are
it
going to
seems
know the
like
Browns are going to be interested in a tackle, right?
yes,
So
yes,
there
yeah,
there might be competition
yeah,
to get to 32 if
yeah.
you're the Browns, move up one spot because
Plus,
somebody else is trying to do it.
plus that fifth year option is nice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's something to certainly keep an eye on there. I agree with the wide receiver thing. If you like somebody else and he's still there at 28, you can go ahead and wait. Um, But if you love him like I love Ibuka, then I'm coming up to get him for five picks. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm with you there. Tackle,
And
quarterback, maybe wide receiver.
I wonder how this is going to work because, like, of course, this happens for Philadelphia.
Yes.
But a lot of people talk about the Browns having the power position at 2 to make these trades and move back. If I don't think this quarterback class is good, I cannot assume that everybody else thinks this quarterback class is amazing. Like I just outsmarted the league or something like that. I'm going to
Yeah.
assume that there's not going to be that much energy to trade up from 2, right?
Yeah.
Because what drives up energy for trade up to 2 is quarterbacks. And if I don't want to take a dude at 2 and we're quarterback desperate, who wants to trade up and then take him at 2? Like, I think that's a very hopeful projection a lot of people are working off of. I think the power position in this draft might end up being pick 32,
Yeah.
right? That last pick of the draft, because
Yeah.
teams are going to have a really good idea of what Cleveland wants. If there's a quarterback that slides there, right? Like let's say Shedeur is sliding, it looks like he might slide out the first or something. Well, all of a sudden, if you're Philly, you know you have the power position here because if you're Cleveland, you might want to trade up. If you're a team that wants a quarterback, you're definitely going to want to trade up because you know that
Yep.
Cleveland's sitting there at 33. They probably didn't take a quarterback at 2 if Shedor's falling all the way to here.
Yep.
So now you got to get up ahead of Cleveland to get the quarterback, which means that Philly's going to have all the leverage here, which is just disgusting because Howie Roseman already is deadly enough in the draft without leverage. Like,
Without giving
what
him that.
two best players on the board is he going to end up with this time?
Yep.
But yeah, I think 32 is one of those spots to keep an eye on where it
Yeah.
might be a hot spot. I wonder if somebody's going to try to like undercut Philly to become the hot spot where it's like, hey, Buffalo's like, hey, no, you can move up to 30. Right, you don't. We'll sell you 30 for 32 prices, right?
Yes. Yep.
So it's. I think that last part of the first round and the early part of the second, that's where you should expect a lot of trade activity,
Be
or at least some
interesting.
trade activity to get a little bit interesting. I know a lot of people have it pegged for the top 5 here, but I don't really think it's going to happen like that this year.
There's
Where
a fall off there too of talent. Like there's an initial fall off, but there's another fall off right there
mhm.
around 32, 33, 34, 35.
I would say around
Um,
like pick 40, there's like,
yep.
okay, boom, like all the
Yep.
first round talent's gone.
Yeah. So you can see a lot of teams maneuvering around. It's interesting too because it's Philadelphia, and then we know the relationship with Barry and Philadelphia front office. 32 to 33, and you're overnight. You're talking about an additional year at 32. It's very interesting. And then 33 is overnight. So the Browns are on the clock at 33. We talked about the guys we would move up for. Kind of our dream guys would probably be the same at 33, right? A tackle like Connerly or Simmons. Um, what if you move back from there? Would you
Mhm.
consider moving back from 33? Like, what will it take to move back from 33? Because that's a very like what I don't think like a team falling in love with Jackson Dart enough to try to move up to 32 or 33 is out of the realm of possibilities. Like I think some teams have him right there with Shador.
I think Jackson Dart is a smokescreen to distract you from the fact that a lot of teams are probably going to want to go after Will Howard. And I think the Browns are included in this. I've watched Will Howard
This high?
since his quarterback, right?
Yeah.
I think these guys are going to make the determination that what's really the difference from taking him in the second versus the third, right? What's really, if you think enough of him to want him on your team, what's really the difference there, right? And I think that's going to drive conversation. I think if the Browns trade back from 33, I would not be surprised if they went from 33 to like 39. If Will Howard is who they go with at 39. And it might be a little bit of a surprise. It's earlier than a lot of people feel like for him, and we got to see how he measures in at the combine, hand
Yes.
size. I think he needs to demonstrate during his pro day. And look, I usually don't care about pro day, but what I do want to see from Will is like, how many pitches do you have that you could throw accurately, right? We know he has that nice little floater that he could drop right there in the bucket, but can you step in and drive one on a consistent basis, right? How much of the field can you use, and how much of like you underthrowing some of these outs were because that's how the wide receivers liked it. I think you're gonna
Yes.
have to figure out some of that.
I said this last night about him because I love I think his processing skills and the ability to kind of layer in footballs and over the middle is above most quarterbacks in this class. The thing that I haven't seen on film from him is him go like 5-step drop, stand in the pocket, and have to beat a safety to the field side from the far hash
Mm-hmm.
and beat him with velocity to can he access that throw? You know what I mean?
And
In the little honey hole there between the 15, 25 yards down the field. I haven't seen him do that on film because Ohio State rolled him out a lot and used a lot of stuff to shorten fields for him, which you can
well,
do in the NFL, but I haven't seen that on film yet, and I want to
yeah,
see that at the Combiners Pro Day.
I think also how much is the hashes being much smaller, right? Which means the field side, or not the field side, the weak side, right, that you're going to be working on, the side the ball is on, is much
Yeah.
wider in the
Yes.
NFL than it is in college, right, where it's more
Yeah.
condensed. And he did a really good job working on that condensed side of the field in college. Most of his most amazing throws are vertical on the
Yeah.
condensed side. Can he still make those vertical throws from inside where that hash is going to be in the NFL, which is about, I don't know the exact measurements, but it's a significant amount distance in. It's like at
Yeah.
least 5 yards in. So does that change what he
Yeah.
can access from a throwing level in the NFL? We talked about it, right? The ability to drive. Like, I also wonder how much of this is technique based, right? Because I look at
Hmm.
Shedeur, I'm like, Shedeur has amazing technique. You can tell he's had the best coaching since he was 12.
Of course. Yeah.
When I watch Will Howard, he doesn't have bad technique, but it's like, man, for a guy who's as big as he is, he should really be able to drive this ball just a little harder. And I wonder how much of that is mechanically related. Not saying he's going to make a huge jump, right? But I do think that some of this stuff he can get more juice on that football if he just follows through or tunes up his mechanics a bit. Because I feel like some of this is just he doesn't really follow through very hard on these footballs at time, and that's why it always comes in a little soft, a little bit more arced, because that's how he prefers to throw it. So yeah, and I think also him being in the combine, like I would say if I had to guess before the combine, who's the biggest riser going to be?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Will Howard because
Yeah.
he's going to get to the combine. He's going to be 6'5",
Yeah.
235. We're going to find out that Shedeur's not that big, right?
Yeah.
Which might throw people off, right? He might be 6 foot, right, or a little taller than 6 foot, but
Yeah.
not 6'1".
Hmm.
So that might throw some people off there when it comes with Shedeur. But Will Howard's going to be 6'5". I reckon that him and Shedeur and Cam are going to run similar 40 times, right? If they all run, I think he's going to
That'd
run a
be
similar
very
40 time.
interesting. Yeah.
And he probably will have a better 10-yard split. That's my hot take there.
I think so
He's a
too.
very intelligent runner of the football, like very similar to those guys, but just at a much bigger size. And if he demonstrates that, hey, like some of this stuff you saw on tape with arm strength wasn't necessarily an inability to do it physically, but I just need to tighten up my mechanics a little bit more. Um, then you can easily see how that's a second round pick here. I wonder how much of like the Jackson Dart thing, because like I just can't find anybody to tell me that they actually want to take Jackson Dart in the first or second round. But if somebody does it, good on them.
We'll
But
see. I like
yeah,
him a little bit.
I wonder how much of this is like, hey, we're going to talk about Dart so nobody talks about the guy who just had one of the best runs in college football. Because I watch Will Howard's tape and like he and Shedeur give me the most wild throws. Cam Ward's in there too. And it's interesting that like he's the one guy who's never been lumped into a conversation with those guys, even if we're talking about second, third round. So yeah, I think Will's going to be interesting. I'm planning on dropping like a breakdown of exactly why it is that I feel it's going through like 6 Will Howard
Yeah.
games.
Yes.
But yeah, it's been interesting to see that. But yeah, just to circle back to the original question, I just would not be surprised if Will goes in that first 10 picks of the second round. And if you like Will enough, it is
Take him at
justifiable.
33.
Yeah, like I don't know about 33. I think I would still try to trade back, but it depends on how much heat you're feeling and how much you like him, right? Like if he goes, rocks
Yeah.
the combine out, you might want to take him at 33. But if he goes there, he has a pretty good combine, still have some concerns about things, then okay, you trade back maybe to 40, 42 or something like that. Mid second round, try to get an extra third out of it
Yeah.
and try to do what the Eagles did with Jalen Hurts, which is, hey, this guy might not be all pro at quarterback, right? Like he may never be an all pro, but we think the floor is low enough. We think he could do the basics well enough that
Yeah.
if we build a good enough team around him, we can win a Super Bowl. And him being a second round pick allows you to do that because he'd be cheap and you wouldn't have to spend your best resources like you would if you wanted to
100%.
take Shedeur, number 2 overall, on quarterback. You're allowed to say, hey, no, we're going to go get Abdul Carter, right? We're going to go and use both our third round picks on maybe a wide receiver, not a wide receiver, but a tight end and a running back to build the run
Right.
game. You know,
Yeah.
you still maintain a lot of flexibility there. And it's not somebody you got to start right away, even though I think Will would probably be ready pretty quickly if he's going to be decent in the league.
He seems like he would be one of the more NFL ready guys, because of his size and because of like the questions you have that I have about most of the quarterbacks, are processing. I mean, the thing about Will Howard that is the most intriguing is just his ability to kind of get through progressions and process. And it seems like he has an innate feel of just playing the position. Um,
Yeah, I feel like
that's very intriguing. Like you
he's going to
want to
be
see where
very
that can
impressive
go.
on those whiteboard meetings that we see in a combine,
That's
right?
that's what I'm
Like
talking about. Yeah,
when he gets into those meetings with them. Yeah, I wonder because he did not do the Senior Bowl. He was supposed to do the Senior Bowl. He didn't do
yeah,
it. I was wondering. I'm like, I thought that was a missed opportunity for him because he
yeah,
would have looked like a knight in shining armor
yeah,
at the Senior Bowl,
yeah,
because it wasn't a great look for a lot of these quarterbacks because we walked
yeah,
out thinking Tyler Shaw's the best guy. He's so much better than Tyler Shaw.
yeah,
So yeah, I wonder if this combine is going to be that opportunity for Will because I think there's like he did this against some of the best secondaries like Texas, Penn State, Oregon twice. Like I know people use that he had the best wide receivers that money can buy at Ohio State against him, and that is true. And look, Jeremiah Smith bailed him out of a few situations at
yeah.
Ohio State, but it wasn't just all the wide receivers. Like it didn't look like
No,
Kyle McCord out there. No disrespect to Kyle, but it did look like Kyle McCord out there throwing to Marvin Harrison, where it's like it's all on Marvin.
yeah,
It looked a lot different than that. So I do think
it did.
he deserves a lot of credit for how he played. And the more I watch him, the more I like him.
Yeah, me too. His intangibles as well. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's a guy that can command a room and lead. And I think he showed that uh, to everybody kind of in their playoff run in this season, overcome adversity, all of those things. It kind of checks all those boxes for a guy that's not getting the hype with the top guys in this class. It's very intriguing.
Yeah, which is
Um,
crazy, right? Because normally the 6'5" guy who
yeah,
wins a national championship at
yeah,
quarterback, usually
yeah.
that guy gets overhyped, right?
You would think. The question, I think you make a good point about his size and our questions about his arm strength. Like Josh Allen, there was never a question about Josh Allen's arm strength. He always had a cannon, but his question was about his accuracy when he came out. And I watched a video on what they did to help him with his accuracy, and it was basically he was just throwing with his arm, all arm, and
Just
they
straight
got
talent.
him. Yeah, they got him to get his hips into it and his body to be the driving force behind his throws so that he can use his arm for just touch and
Mhm.
accuracy instead of having to rely on just the arm strength to get it there. You wonder if a similar type of making sure that with his frame and body, if they you make sure that Will Howard gets his hips and his whole body into the throws, can expand on some of that arm strength a little bit.
I also wonder like how much of this is like he takes it a little bit off so he can be a little bit more accurate.
Yeah,
And that's why it looks like it does. And I wonder how accurate he is when he does try to put maybe you don't want him to go 100% right, but like 92,
yeah,
right? 95% into it
yeah,
for a couple of throws a game. But I'm gonna be honest, like he has that ability to be on time and accurate. And as long as he can work with the smaller hashes in the NFL,
yeah,
the field side well and just be serviceable. I mean, not the field
yeah,
side, but the short side well and be
yeah,
serviceable on the field side to where you can't just leave it super empty if you're a
yeah,
defensive coordinator. I think he's a quick enough processor and a decisive enough quarterback where he can make those decisions a little bit quicker and kind of live with the lack. Like if you look for quarterbacks who can live with a lack of arm strength, he does have the things that you need to work there. Now it's not a
Like,
100% projection. There's a good chance that you draft Will Howard and he ends up being a backup, right?
yeah,
But I think, on the scale of 1 to 10, if you take him in the second round, it's like a 7 out of 10 shot.
yeah,
Where I'm like, yeah, you might get some. Like I feel better than average about it.
yeah. It's exciting. Like the quarterback we talked about before, like the quarterback position will do. It will give you hope and get you excited. You have to be careful of that trap. I do think you make some really good points about Howard. Anybody else you love in this area worth mentioning? We talked tackle. They have to address that at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The crazy thing about, you take the more I look at this class, there are just a couple areas where it's shockingly deep. Um, like edge, defensive tackle. It's a deep class. I think
Yeah,
you
running
can
back,
get
tight
guys that can
end.
help all the way through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
There are gonna be
tight
some good
end,
undrafted players this year.
running back is ridiculous. I mean, you can get 30 running backs that can help you in this,
Mm-hmm.
it's wild. Um, so, you wonder if, here's like a Mike Green. I don't think he'll get there, but if he gets to like late first round, is that a guy worth coming up and get? Not obviously not if he just took Carter, but
If
guys like that are intriguing as hell.
Jihad Ward is somebody I think of that's super intriguing there at
Yeah,
33. Like Mike Green would almost be if Mike Green failed at 33, I feel like there's a reason, right, that
yeah,
he failed at 33. And
hmm
then that's a red flag to me because I'm like
yeah.
that's a guy that's probably should go in the top 15, right?
Sure looks like
So
it. Yeah,
yeah, so it's like I would be careful with like certain guys that they fell there because it's like, hey, why is this guy here? Is this like a medical or is there like an off the field situation with a player? But yeah, like a Jahal Ward, right? I think
or one of these top running backs at 33 is
yeah,
intriguing.
Caleb Johnson, right? Really intriguing at
Hampton.
33. Yeah,
I even
Omarion
have.
Hampton.
I have Trevion Henderson up there. I think he's going to test freakishly at the combine.
No,
So
Trev's gonna kill the 40.
yeah, I
he's gonna
mean
destroy. He's gonna destroy the
The
40.
more I watch of him, the more I think he's up there with Hampton
I would
and
love to know what his three
Johnson.
cone's going to be. I just want to know how
I know.
flexible those hips are, right? Like his ability to go side to side, because that's the only thing I'm concerned about him. But yeah, I mean, you're gonna get a lot of risers here, but I still would go Caleb Johnson probably be the best fit there. I could
Polished.
see them loving Travion though, because that's what everybody hoped that Jerome Ford could be in Cleveland,
Yes.
but was not able to become. There's a number of guys there. I mean, we talked about A. Manor. We talked about Emeka Ibuka, another guy there that I think a lot of people would love there. Was it Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan?
Loveland.
Yeah, which would make
Yep.
you ask some really hard questions. Cause like, man, if he's there, that means so many of the other better tight ends are there. Well, not better, but good tight ends are there, and you might be able to wait. Brad, I think this is an interesting question for people to ask themselves. How long do you give yourself, hey man, there's still guys back there before you just take one of these guys, right? Like, because you don't want to go, man, I could get a running back next round. I could get a running back next round. And then it's the sixth round, and then you're picking between like Donovan Edwards
Yeah. Yeah.
and like Baishul Tootin or somebody like that, right?
Yeah. Who I
So
actually really like a lot.
yeah.
But
I mean, like,
uh,
that's what I'm saying. Like, if there's still going to be guys there that you could take,
yeah.
but it's like, okay, at what point do you say, you know what, man, Caleb Johnson is a 3 down back. There's not a lot of them there. I think you almost got to separate this running back class into
Tiers.
tiers so you
Yeah.
don't run into that problem here. Same thing with tight end. Same thing with
Edge.
guard and edge and especially tackle, right?
Yep.
So yeah, there's a lot to figure out. And I think the depth in this class is going to be challenging because it's like this is the best draft that hates positional value.
Yeah,
Like,
right,
positional
that you're
value be damned in this year's
yep,
draft, because all the deep parts of this draft are parts that people have told you for years you don't draft high, but like the talent is so overwhelming that you're going to have to make some tough decisions here. So, yeah,
yeah,
I think Caleb Johnson be somebody that's like, hey, I'm willing to break the mindset of there's a running back next round to get somebody like him, because I think the difference
yeah.
between him and like a Devin Neal is big enough to care
Yeah, you
about.
gotta have that. I think the way you said it is perfect. Tiers, and like if this point at this point in the draft, and his value, like if he's there, it's worth that at that point. And then what guys are in that tier, and then what guys are we waiting on, and then how many guys are left in this tier? Can we take it? Do we have to take them now, or can we get to the next round? It's something that's going to be difficult to navigate. But well, it's the fun of the draft, man. It's awesome.